Hi, my name is An Wen, and 5 weeks ago, my mother threw me a dinner party to say thank you for paying off her mortgage. She made lemon chicken and used the good plates. That should have tipped me off. My mother never says thank you unless there's a string tied to the words, usually invisible, always tight. The kind of string that tugs a little more each year, until one day you're too tangled to move without asking her first. But that night, the table was set beautifully. There were candles, a floral centerpiece, even cloth napkins folded into crisp fans. And across from me, my younger sister, Isolde, sat smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. Something felt off, but I smiled back. Because that's what daughters like me are taught to do. Smile, even when you know you're walking into a room that was staged, not set. There were 7 of us around the table: my parents, Isolde, her boyfriend, my cousin Clara, and my mom's best friend Denise. All faces I grew up with. All people who had, in some way or another, witnessed how hard I had worked to hold my family together when things fell apart 5 years ago. Back when my dad lost his job. When the mortgage payments piled up and foreclosure papers started arriving like utility bills. When my mom cried in the kitchen one night and told me they might have to sell the house. So I offered to help. I was the responsible one, after all. The one with a job that paid well enough. The one who understood numbers. The one who didn't have 2 DUIs, a failed engagement, and 5 overdrafted accounts in 1 year. I was the daughter who made spreadsheets. To Anwen, my mom said now, raising her wine glass. Who stepped up when this family needed her? Who made it possible for us to keep our home? Everyone raised their glasses. I felt heat crawl up the back of my neck. I don't like the spotlight. I like being useful. Quietly. Without ceremony. Still, I nodded, lips tight. You deserve something in return, she added. That's when she stood up and walked to the sideboard. She brought back a white folder, tied in ribbon, smiling wide, like it was a game show prize. I felt something in me freeze. She handed it to Isolde. Congratulations, sweetheart, Mom said. It's finally official. The house is yours. The room fell into a kind of hush I imagine happens just before a car crash. I looked at the folder, then at my mother, then at my sister, who was already tearing the ribbon off with shaking fingers and a nervous laugh. Wait. What? I said, calm but distant, like my own voice was being piped through the ceiling. My mom clapped a hand over her heart. Isolde's name is on the deed now, she beamed. We filed the paperwork this week. It's hers. You're giving her the house? My voice didn't raise. It didn't need to. It felt like the floor was already tilting. You're not even living here, Mom said. You have your apartment, your career, your life. She needs a foundation, a fresh start. I looked at Isolde. She wasn't smiling anymore. She looked afraid. I knew that fear. It's the fear you feel when you realize you're inside someone else's plan, and you didn't even know there was a plan at all. 5 years. I'd paid 5 years of mortgage installments. Some months, I paid the entire amount. Others, I covered the gap when they came up short. I even set up autopay from my account. They told me, again and again, that the house would eventually be mine. That this was an investment, a future, a trust. My dad had even said, we'll put it in writing eventually. Eventually, like tomorrow never stops being tomorrow. Now the only thing in writing was Isolde's name. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my wine glass or call anyone a liar, though all of it was true. I just stood up, walked slowly to the console table near the door, unhooked the keyring from my purse, and placed the house key, my key, on top of the folder. There you go, I said softly. Guess I was just the lender. Anwen, my mom said, sharp now, standing. Don't be like this. This is still your home. No, I said. It's hers. You made that clear. This dinner wasn't a thank you. It was a handover. I turned to go. My heels silent on the hardwood. The same floors I'd paid to have refinished. As I opened the front door, I paused. Just one question, I said without turning around. When did you decide I didn't deserve what I built for you? There was no answer, only the sound of Isolde's breathing and the quiet click of the door behind me. I walked to my car, not crying, because some things cut so deep you skip the bleeding and go straight to scar. The morning after the dinner, I woke up in my apartment to silence. That kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like someone just took your last word and left the room before you could ask why. I made coffee. Black, no sugar. Sat on the counter while it brewed, staring at the chipped tile behind the sink. And the moment the machine hissed its last drip, I remembered exactly how the last 5 years had started. Because it hadn't always been obvious. When someone betrays you cleanly, it's easy to identify the scar. But when it's slow, when it's done through thank yous, favors, and smiling, just one more things, it takes longer to realize you were bleeding the whole time. It started with a Sunday afternoon 5 years ago. I was living paycheck to paycheck, but managing. Just got promoted. My mom called. Just come for lunch, she'd said. That Sunday turned into a request. Your dad's job isn't stable anymore, she said, casually stirring her tea. He won't say it, of course. You know how prideful he is. I thought you refinanced last spring, I said. We did. But then Isolde's tuition hit, and the roof leak, and… She trailed off, like I was supposed to fill in the rest of the math. I'm not asking for everything, she said gently. Just the difference. A buffer? How much? She smiled, lips still on the rim of her mug. $400 a month, for a few months. The first few months passed quickly. Then another. Then one where I covered the whole mortgage, because their auto-pay mysteriously bounced. Then my mom started sending thank you cards with vague messages like, "You're the reason this family stays upright." At first it felt good. It felt needed. It didn't feel like bait. Yet. Fast forward to a year in, I was still helping. I even set up a standing transfer. Not because I was trying to be a martyr, but because every time I hesitated, I'd get a call like this. Anwen, your father had to use his credit card again. I don't think we'll be able to keep the house if this keeps going. Do you want Isolde to move into a motel? She's still not working. And somehow, I became the net beneath their circus. That Christmas, I offered to buy a new water heater for them as a gift. Isolde cried when I handed the receipt to my dad. I just don't know how you always show up like this, she said, dabbing her face like a B-list actress. You're literally saving all of us. She sounded grateful. But a week later, I found out she'd bought a $200 purse. When I brought it up, my mom blinked at me like I'd accused her of something criminal. That was her birthday gift, from me, she said flatly. With what money? Mom gave a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You don't need to monitor everything we spend. You said this was help. Don't make it transactional. And that's when the language started to shift, from thank you to we never asked for this to it's not your place. The second year, things escalated. They asked me to sign a joint bank form so they could streamline the payments. They caught me in a rush, literally at the tail end of a dentist appointment. Mom waiting in the parking lot, waving the paperwork in a manila envelope. It's just a formality, she said. You're already paying it. It just makes things easier. I should have read it. I didn't. And when I started receiving bank mail addressed to Anwen Hart, co-signer, I knew. That key moment, small, quick, but surgical, was when my mother stopped asking and started deciding. By the end of year 3, I stopped calling it help. It had become obligation, silent, sticky, and guilt-sealed. I'd try to pull back, shift payments to every other month. But then came the stories. Isolde's credit scores dropping because of the utility bills. Your father skipped his medication to cover the water bill. If we lose this house, it'll destroy our reputation. And the worst one, we raised you better than this. One night, Isolde called me crying. She was sitting outside a bar, drunk, saying she'd messed up everything again. I wish I was like you, she whispered. I wish I could hold anything together. And like a fool, I said the same thing I always did. I've got you. Just go home. Get some sleep. I didn't know I was funding her overdrafts and her glow-ups, her rent-free room in the house, her nights out, hair appointments, and silent Uber charges that showed up on the family card. The one that Mom insisted she had under control. By the end of year 4, I gave up on setting boundaries. They were never seen as safety. They were treated like betrayal. Every no I gave was a weapon. We can't believe you'd withhold from your own family. You think money makes you better? Do you even love us anymore? It wasn't just about the money. It was about how invisible I became the second I stopped saying yes. That's what broke me, more than the bank account. I could vanish, and no one would notice unless it affected their convenience. But the final drop, the thing that turned quiet resentment into true rupture, came during a brunch at Clara's house, just a week before the dinner. Clara pulled me aside in the kitchen. Her tone was hesitant, but firm. "Hey, did you know your mom's been telling people the house is already Isolde's?" My stomach dropped. "No, because it's not." She bit her lip. "I overheard her at Aunt Miriam's last week. She said, and I quote, 'Anwen helped us bridge the gap, but Isolde deserves the reward. She's the one rebuilding her life.'" I laughed. "Because what else do you do when someone strips your 5 years of sacrifice down to bridge the gap?" Clara touched my hand. "You're not crazy. I just thought you should know before they do something irreversible. They already had. I just didn't know it yet." That's what made the dinner not just betrayal, but performance. They didn't just give the house away. They hosted a ceremony to applaud themselves for it. The week after the dinner, I lived like I was inside a glass room. Everything looked the same. My apartment, my desk at work, the same mug, the same morning commute. But I could feel it. Something had cracked under the surface of me. Not broken, not yet, but flexed. Buckling. I didn't talk to my parents. Isolde texted me once, a stiff line that read, "I didn't ask for this, okay?" I stared at it for a few minutes, then turned off my phone, because whether she asked or not didn't matter anymore. She received, she accepted, and that said everything. It wasn't until Thursday that I finally pulled the shoebox out of my closet. It was one of those cardboard memory boxes, the kind people buy in hopeful aisles at Target, thinking they'll use it to hold letters and love notes. Mine was stuffed with bank statements, mortgage emails, duplicate receipts, sticky notes my mom used to leave on my desk at work, saying things like, "Don't forget Dad's dental thing. I'll Venmo later. 3." She never Venmo'd. I laid it all out on the dining table. Dates, amounts, auto-pay confirmations. I even printed out my Venmo history and highlighted every transaction from the past 5 years with their names on it. The sum was nauseating. It wasn't just 5 years of mortgage payments. It was 5 years of ownership. Not legal, but functional. I wasn't helping. I was funding. Quietly, entirely. But here's the thing that changed everything. One of the papers in the box wasn't folded. It was a loan statement, sent to me by the bank 2 years ago. I remembered glancing at it, assuming it was a record of an automatic payment I'd made on their behalf. But now I looked again. There it was. My full legal name. Co-signer. On a home refinance agreement. I blinked. I never signed that. I never even saw that. I held it under the kitchen light, hands trembling. The signature at the bottom was mine. Except it wasn't. Not the way I sign. Mine has a clean, sharp loop in the W. This one was rounded, rushed, and one letter was misshaped, something I'd never done. I dropped into a chair. My mother had forged my name. For a while I sat there, listening to the hum of the fridge. Not crying, just stunned. There's a kind of betrayal that's so detailed it feels surgical. Like someone studied you, measured your blind spots, and used them as entry points. She knew I wouldn't check. She knew I'd trust her. And that's when I stopped being shocked and started getting angry. I called Maribel. We hadn't spoken in months, but she answered on the second ring. "You okay?" she asked. "You sound tight." "I need legal eyes. Yours." I told her about the refinance agreement, the forged signature. She whistled low. "You kept it all?" "Every receipt. You know how rare that is? Most people come to me with vibes. You have documentation. Is it fraud? It's textbook, she said. If she used your name and credit without your consent, that's not just fraud. That's a felony. My stomach turned. I'm not looking to throw my mom in jail. She paused. Anwin, you may not be throwing her in, but she walked in, shut the door behind her, and used your name as the key. We met the next morning. I brought everything. Maribel, in her usual oversized blazer and coffee-stained notepad, spread the documents across her living room floor. You said the refinance was 2 years ago? I nodded. Around the time they claimed things were finally stabilizing. She pulled up my credit history. Look at this, she said, tapping the screen. Your credit score dropped 41 points that month. What? I'm guessing the refinance triggered a hard inquiry. And here's the kicker. Your name is still on the current mortgage. I felt sick. Not only had they forged my name, they'd anchored me to a house that I no longer legally had any claim to. But if it defaulted, if they missed a payment, it would hit my credit first. And they never told me. I went home that night different. Not just angry, aware. You know that moment when you stop telling yourself, maybe I misunderstood, and you finally admit, no, they meant it. They chose this. They built this cage and put my name on the lock. That's when the shift happens. You don't raise your voice. You raise your standards. I sat at my desk until midnight, drafting a letter. Not a confrontation. An inquiry to the bank, to the county recorder's office, to the credit agency. I attached the documents, asked for clarification of consent on all signatory forms under my legal identity. I used words like third-party authorization and credit integrity, because when someone tries to trap you with paperwork, you don't argue with feelings. You file your own. I didn't tell anyone, not Isolde, not Dad, especially not Mom. I just waited. 2 weeks later, I got a response. From the bank. A representative named Celia called and asked if we could verify my identity for a previous refinance. I confirmed my birth date, SSN address. Then she asked, do you recall signing Form 421B with Notary J. Ellison on August 8th, 2 years ago? I was out of town that week, in Chicago, at a work conference. I still had the badge. No, I said. I didn't sign anything that week. There was a pause. I see, Celia said. Thank you, Ms. Hart. We'll escalate this internally and loop you in as needed. That was it. That's all I had to say. And suddenly, they were the ones on edge. The silence from my family that week felt louder than anything. I didn't know if the bank had reached out yet, but I knew this. I had leverage now, not emotional, documented. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized they hadn't just taken advantage of my trust. They'd used my identity like a spare tire, like something they could keep in the trunk, roll out when things went flat, and toss away once they reached smooth road. Only this time, I wasn't letting them drive off. Isolde showed up at my door on a Thursday evening. No call, no warning. I heard the knock while reheating a plate of leftovers. When I opened the door and saw her, mascara smudged, shoulders drawn tight into her coat like armor, I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside and let her in. She walked to the center of the living room, paused, and let out a breath that trembled more than her voice. You filed something. I closed the door behind her. You're going to need to be more specific. Isolde turned, eyes wide. The bank called Mom, then a lawyer, then something from the county. She's freaking out. I leaned against the wall, calm, steady. She forged my name, Isolde. She said it was a mistake. Stop. The word was quiet, cold. The kind of stop that doesn't mean pause. It means this is the end of the road. Her mouth opened, then closed. Good. We were done pretending. You knew, didn't you? I asked. Or suspected. Her lips trembled. No. I didn't know the refinance was under your name. But you knew about the dinner, the deed. She told me it was hers to give. That, she'd talked to you, that you were okay with it. I laughed, bitter. She's been rewriting history so long she probably believes it. Isolde sat down, slow, like the weight of it all was finally pushing her bones into the ground. I didn't ask for the house. No, I said. You just accepted it. There was a pause, long, tense. Then her voice cracked, small and quiet. Why did you never fight her? That got me. I blinked. What? You always took it. Let her push you around. Act like everything was fine. Maybe if you'd stood up to her earlier. Is that seriously your angle right now? No. I don't understand how she does this. To you, to me. And we let her. The truth landed like a dull echo in the room. We let her, not because we were weak, but because we were wired to survive her. You remember when I was 10, Isolde said suddenly, eyes glassy. And I broke that vase. The antique one. Yeah. She made me tell everyone you did it. I nodded. She said it was because you could handle it, that your reputation could take the hit. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was so on brand. She said the same thing when she used my credit. I could handle it. The silence stretched. Then, for the first time in years, Isolde asked a real question. What are you going to do? I'm not going to the police, not yet. She looked up sharply. But I'm done shielding her. If the bank escalates, they escalate. If she drowns, it's water she poured. Isolde closed her eyes. You're serious? I tilted my head. Have you ever known me not to be? That night, after she left, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my old journals, back before I learned to bite my tongue, back before therapy taught me to be emotionally measured. I flipped through entries that read like someone gaslighting herself in real time. Mom yelled at me for forgetting to text her back, but I guess I was rude, so fair. She asked me to help with bills again. I feel like she's taking advantage, but maybe I'm overthinking it. Page after page. I wasn't just groomed to give. I was trained to question myself every time I felt used. And suddenly, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about remembering who I was before she rewrote me. A week later, I got another unexpected visit. Dad. He never came to my place. He stood awkwardly in my doorway, holding a bag of oranges like it was a peace offering. I thought you liked these, he mumbled. I took them without a word, then waited. She's not doing well, he said. She forged my signature, Dad. I know. That stunned me. You knew? He looked down at his shoes. I saw the documents. I didn't know what to say. I thought, maybe she had your permission, and by the time I realized she didn't, it was already done. You could have told me. I didn't want to be in the middle. I let out a breath that burned my lungs. You weren't in the middle, Dad. You stood behind her. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller. She's scared, Anwen. She thinks you're trying to destroy her. I'm not. But you could. I won't lie for her anymore, that's all. He nodded. You know she always wanted the best for you, right? I stared. No. She wanted the best from me. There's a difference. That night, I got a text from Isolde. She asked me to lie for her, to say I signed the documents, that I was the one who submitted them. I said no. She screamed at me, said I'm dead to her now. I'm sorry. That was the moment I realized something huge. It wasn't about me anymore. She was unraveling, and for the first time, she was alone in it, because she hadn't just pushed me too far. She pushed everyone. 3 days after my father's visit, I got the text from my mother. Sunday dinner. Everyone will be there. Let's talk. 6 p.m. sharp. No games. Just family. No games, she said. That line alone told me it would be all games. I didn't respond. Didn't confirm. But at 5:58 p.m., I pulled into the driveway of the house I used to call home. The porch light was already on. Through the front window, I could see the long dining table set, again, with the same formal plates from the thank you dinner. The same fan-folded napkins. A sick echo of that night, as if playing by the same script would undo the damage. But this wasn't the same scene. This time, I knew my role, and I had no intention of following her script. I walked in without knocking. Everyone looked up. Mom, in her usual position, at the head of the table. Isolde beside her, looking pale. My dad across, hands folded tightly. Even Denise, her longtime friend and social witness, was here, sitting like some quiet referee with a wineglass and a too bright smile. "Anwen," Mom said. "You made it." I didn't sit. "You said we should talk." She smiled. "We should, but not standing up, please." I took the empty chair at the far end, directly across from her. The length of the table between us felt symbolic. "I think we've all had a lot of emotions," she began, her tone calm but curated. "But this doesn't have to tear the family apart." "Depends on your definition of family," I said. Her eyes flicked, but she kept her smile. "I know you're angry." "Not angry," I said. "Informed." Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother didn't mean to hurt you. She forged a legal document." Mom's smile cracked briefly, then smoothed. "It wasn't forgery. It was a mistake. The notary thought you'd signed. He was rushed. It was confusing." "Really?" "Because I was in Chicago that week. Not exactly local." Denise shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Isolde looked down at her hands. "Look," Mom said, her voice sharper now. "We made a choice for the family. Isolde needed stability. She was in crisis. You weren't even living here." "I was paying for here." "You make more than she ever has. And we trusted you'd understand." There it was. The central lie, reworded into virtue. "We used you," cloaked as. "We trusted you." Isolde finally spoke. "Mom, maybe we should just—" "Don't," Mom snapped, then softened her tone immediately, as if catching herself. "Don't interrupt, sweetheart." And for the first time, I saw it clearly. She was unraveling, not collapsing, calculating, but losing control of the outcome. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to contain the narrative. I pulled out the envelope I'd brought in my bag, placed it quietly on the table, and slid it toward her. "What's this?" she asked, wary. "Copies of everything I filed. Bank responses, notary statements, timeline evidence. You know, truth." She didn't touch the envelope. "You're trying to destroy me," she whispered. "No," I said. "I'm giving you the chance to be honest. Because if this goes public, it won't just be legal, it'll be personal. Everyone in this town knows you. They listen to you." "You wouldn't." "Would I?" My voice didn't need to rise. Her panic filled the room, louder than any volume could. She turned to Dad. "Say something," she barked. He opened his mouth, closed it again. "She's right," Isolde said softly. Mom turned, eyes blazing. "What did you just say?" "She's right. You used her. You used me. You always have." A silence fell like glass breaking. "You wouldn't have lasted a week if she hadn't stepped in," Mom hissed. "And you never let me forget it," Isolde snapped. "You guilted me into thinking I owed you for everything, that the only way I could ever matter was if I needed you." Mom stood up. "You're both ungrateful. I gave everything for this family." "No," I said quietly. "You took everything. You called it giving so we wouldn't complain." And then the moment came, the one that shifted the earth beneath us. I stood up calmly. "I'm giving you a choice. Sign a statement admitting what you did, privately, or I let the bank proceed." She opened her mouth to scream. I didn't wait. I walked to the door. "Anwen," she said, voice shaking. "You think this gives you power?" "No," I said, turning back once. "It gives me peace." And then I left. The echo of her silence followed me out. 3 weeks after the dinner, I packed my things. No announcement, no dramatic goodbye. I just folded my life into cardboard boxes, piece by piece, like I was dismantling a stage set that no longer needed an audience. The apartment was quiet. Even the air felt different, like it knew. There were no tears, no hesitation. just a kind of focused stillness that I hadn't felt in years. I'd already cried the real tears months ago, alone, in silence, before I had the language for betrayal. This wasn't grief, it was release. I was moving to Portland. Not because I had a job lined up there, though I'd find one. Not because I needed to escape either. It was because I finally realized I didn't owe my presence to people who mistook it for a resource. Portland wasn't a new beginning, it was a reset. A choice made by me, for me. Maribel came to help with the loading. "Your mom knows?" she asked, taping up a box. "No. She'll find out through the grapevine, or when her next lie hits a wall she built herself." She gave me a small smile. "You're more graceful than most." I shook my head. "No, I'm just tired. There's a difference." That night, I sat alone in the empty living room with a mug of tea and one last unpacked box. The memory one. I didn't open it, just stared at it. Then, finally, I grabbed a Sharpie and wrote across the top, "This is what I survived," and slid it onto the shelf of a closet I wouldn't take with me. 2 days before I left, I got a letter. An actual letter, no name on the envelope, but the handwriting was unmistakable. I opened it at the kitchen counter, slowly, as if expecting it to explode. It was from my mother. "You win. Happy now? You've turned your sister against me. You've made your father feel like a ghost in his own home. Congratulations, Anwin. Whatever throne you're sitting on must be very comfortable." No apology. Just accusation dressed as surrender. I folded it once, twice, and tossed it into the recycling bin without a second thought. 2 hours later, I got a text from Isolde. She kicked me out, said I betrayed her. "I'm staying with a friend for now, just, thank you," for showing me I could leave too. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Leaving isn't the hardest part. Staying gone is. But you'll be okay. I meant it." She would. The next morning, I left the keys on the counter, took one last look around, not out of nostalgia, but because I wanted to remember what it looked like, the place where I stopped waiting to be chosen. The drive to Portland was long, quiet, no music, just the wind in my thoughts, like threads finally untangling. There's a moment on the highway when the city behind you disappears, and all that's ahead is open road. That was the moment I exhaled for real, not because the past was gone, but because it no longer dictated the direction I faced. I didn't expect to hear from Denise. She wasn't someone who reached out, not even during the family dinner disaster where she sat like Switzerland with mascara. But her message came on a gray Monday. "Saw your mom at the grocery store. She looked different, like someone took the script out of her hands." I read it 3 times before replying. That someone was me. That week, it started happening. The ripple. Not a dramatic implosion. Not some shouting match across a suburban lawn. More like small fractures showing in all the places she had once controlled. The women from church stopped calling. The friendly neighbor who used to bring over lemon bars just because now waved from a distance, polite but cautious. At first glance, nothing explosive. But for a woman like my mother, social silence is the sharpest kind. Isolde called that Wednesday. She sounded free. "I got a temp job," she said, "at a nonprofit. I'm doing admin work for now, but it feels good to earn something that doesn't come with guilt." "That's huge," I said, and I signed a lease. Tiny studio, kind of gross. "But it's mine." There was a pause. Then she asked, soft, "Do you think she'll ever talk to me again?" I didn't lie. "I don't know. But ask yourself something. If she does, will it be for you or for what you can give her again?" 2 days later, I got a voicemail from my dad. "Anwin, I know you don't want to hear from me, but things aren't the same here. Your mother? She's different. Angry all the time. Or quiet in a way that scares me more. I think she's realizing everyone's walking away. Even me." I didn't call him back. Not because I didn't care, but because the version of me that would have tried to fix him that would have gone back and played family therapist. She didn't live here anymore. What no one tells you about detachment is that it doesn't come with applause. There's no parade for unlearning your own erasure. But sometimes, freedom is just the silence after they stop expecting you to pick up the phone. Still, the universe has a strange sense of timing. 1 week later, I got an email from a local news blog back home. Nothing sensational, just a small article. City records flag irregularities in long-standing property transfer. Anonymous source indicates mortgage refinanced under family member's name without permission. Officials cite need for review of notary practices and potential misuse of homeowners' equity. They didn't name names, but anyone in town with a brain and a memory could connect the dots. The queen had fallen, and the court was watching. I got another letter in the mail. No return address, but inside was a single typed sentence. "You've ruined everything. Hope it was worth it." I burned it in my kitchen sink without flinching. That Friday, Isolde texted again. She's claiming you hacked the loan documents, that you wanted to ruin her reputation out of jealousy. People aren't buying it anymore. They've started asking about me, about you, about what really happened. I sent back only one thing. Truth always sounds like betrayal to those who build power on silence. And that was it. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need vindication. I needed the echo. And it was happening. Not loud, not fast, but real. If you've ever been the one who had to walk away first, quietly, painfully, and completely, just know your echo is still moving through them. They say healing isn't linear. They're right. It's jagged. It doubles back. It tests you on chapters you thought you'd closed. But one day, you look around and realize you're no longer reacting. You're living. I still get the occasional message from old neighbors, former friends of my mom, people who now whisper the truth out loud instead of behind cupped hands. And I don't answer most of them, not out of bitterness, but because I no longer need to explain myself. They already know. The silence did what words never could. In Portland, I started volunteering with a women's resource center, mostly admin stuff, some grant writing. It felt small at first, until one of the women told me, "You being here makes me feel safe." Safe. Not loved. Not admired. Safe. And I realized that's what I had been missing all along. Safety is not silence. Safety is the freedom to be seen without a price tag. Isolde and I keep in touch. Not constantly, not like best friends, but we send each other links to funny memes, updates about jobs, recipes that fail. She's healing too, in her own timing. Last I heard, Mom was spending more time alone. She tells people I'm bitter, that I left because I couldn't stand not being the favorite. I let her talk. Let her have her story. Because I'm writing mine. This story isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming space. If you've ever been told you don't belong, go build the place where you do. If you've ever had to walk away from people who called it love, just drop A in the comments. You're not alone. Cut to black. I used to think loyalty meant staying, even when staying cost you parts of yourself. Now I know, real love never asks you to shrink. If you've ever been silenced, underestimated, or used under the mask of family, let this be your reminder. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to start over. There's courage in walking away quietly, and power in building peace where chaos once lived. Don't wait for permission to belong to yourself. If this story touched you, tell me where you're watching from, or just drop HI if you've been there too. If this video resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and join this growing space where stories like these are shared, felt, and honored. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, or why this hit home for you. And hey, if it didn't, I'd still love to hear your thoughts. Tell me what didn't connect and where you're watching from. Let's keep the conversation human. Thank you for watching. Your story matters too.